If I may start with the first question, how did you get involved with a project that reached such a size by now?
Oh, it's an accident, as many good things always are. I was working in Jasper National Park on an interdisciplinary research project back in 1996, and we were trying to understand the way in which the Athabasca Valley had changed. That's the valley that runs through the middle of Jasper National Park. I was interested in ecological restoration and these transitional wilderness natural areas, which I thought weren't really wilderness. They had been transformed a lot historically by people. And so we were trying to track all the different types of changes, and we were coming up short on historical information until a graduate student, Janine Remtula, was shown a box of historic photographs that were all nicely bound and had reference numbers and locations and grid lines on them. And we didn't know what they were at the time, but we thought it would be interesting to go back to some of the locations if we could find them and look to see whether there had been any changes in the landscape. And we went to the first one, Powerhouse Cliff, looking over the Athabasca River, and it was almost incomprehensible how much it had changed. The forest composition had shifted, the river had moved, there was a highway in the middle of the image, all sorts of things. And so that got us fascinated and led to work that was tracking the changes in vegetation in that area. So that was really the very first moment in what's now the Mountain Legacy Project. But we thought it was all over after the next couple of years. We came across, I guess we did most of the rest of the repeat photographs in that park, 735 of them from 92 stations. Left it alone for a couple of years, and then we discovered that there were images all over Western Canada, and so it kept going.
Maybe back to these very early stages, what were the challenges when you were going out looking for the images with the archives you have been working with?
Well, it was an informal archives. These were images that belonged to Jasper National Park. And they weren't, at the time, they were just in a box. So I think the challenge was trying to locate all these places. It was an era before Google Earth. It was an era when we were still using differential correction on GPS. We were using film camera, so we used a large format 4x5 inch film camera. So the conditions were quite different, and we were hiking and climbing to a majority of the locations. And neither Janine nor I had really been mountaineers before, so it was a steep learning curve in every way. So that was just, I think those were the challenges at first, in just getting to these places and then physically taking the images using a type of equipment that was pretty demanding to use in the field.
Okay. Beyond the technical side, do you recall some really special challenges you had to face in the early days or up until today?
Yeah, just the sheer physical effort of it. We were working, especially in 1999, very continuously because of excellent weather, so you'd have long days. We'd have days that would last 16 hours, so from, sort of before sunrise to, we'd be getting back after dusk. And we had one chunk of work that we were doing in the Tonquin Valley where I think we did 9 photographic stations in 7 days. So it was just an awful lot of physical labor. So that was challenging and hard to kind of compare that with the work that we do now. I mean, it's still very demanding, but we've had a lot of support with helicopters, especially in Alberta, which speeds up our work.
What are some of the most memorable moments you had in all those years? If you can share maybe one or two.
No, so many. I think the challenge of getting up and down Surprise Point in the Tonquin Valley, which involved a false start. We found the wrong trail initially and got cut off by a head wall, and then had to go around and up a couloir, a steep snow chute, and then reached the summit. And at that point, well, we didn't reach the summit. We reached a shoulder where we And we couldn't figure out why it was called Surprise Point until we figured that every rock was moving on that mountain. When we got to the very summit, it was just a difficult day, but a memorable one because it tested our skills to the maximum. And even on the descent, which was down a very long scree slope, and then we had to circumnavigate the base of the mountain back to camp. So those were good times in the sense that we were working very well together as a team. We were, it was physically demanding, but good memories of the accomplishment for sure. So that's one. Laterally, we've had so many great field teams, and many of them comprising mostly women, so very strong, capable people who are out doing this physically demanding and technically demanding work. And just spending time laughing, working together, it's a wonderful experience. And then I've also been really blessed to have collaborators who have been with the projects in some cases for up to 20 years now. So people like Rob Watt and Rick Arthur and Jill Delaney and others who have been supporting the project in different ways and really caring a lot about it. And then the research community that we built around it too.
There's a tremendous effort going into it, leading to some also quite magnificent findings over the years through the repeat photography.
Mm-hmm.
Could you name maybe one or two or three of them? What kind of transitions you saw and found?
Yeah, well, we've certainly been documenting quite a few different types. So vegetation change is the obvious one that you see in many of the photographs, and that can be about the upward movement of the tree line, which is prominent in many photographs, or increasing density of trees, so trees are growing in or infilling. So we've lost a lot of subalpine meadows which have been encroached by trees. We've seen large-scale fire patterns in our work. In fact, we've had to dodge a lot of smoke in the work that we've done from forest fires. There's been, of course, the obvious changes in glaciers, and wherever we've worked in glacial environments, we've seen a very significant change in glacial patterns. Human activity, so we've seen mines and roads and trails and seismic lines and so many different features, towns, settlements that have either expanded or changed. Some which have gone away, so we see sort of ghost towns or the vestiges of much earlier activity in the landscape. What's interesting to me now is that we put together the accumulation of this work. So we look at all these different phenomena in the landscape. I didn't mention changes in rivers. We've seen quite a bit of that, and especially before and after the big flood that on the Bow River and the Elbow River and right through Calgary. It was a spectacular flood event, so we've been able to document that. But now we have so many images. We have over 8,000 image pairs, and they go from the U.S. border north along the spine of the Rockies to north of Jasper. And so now we're able to look at phenomena at a landscape level, so we can question what's happening as you move north. So you've got a latitudinal gradient. And so those are opening up some new questions. And with some of the custom software that we've developed, we were able to ask and answer new types of questions.
Okay. One special field of your research is also the link between repeat photography and the restoration of ecological systems.
Right.
How can that specific methodology inform better decisions in terms of restoration?
Well, in a couple of ways. Photographs are powerful because they show exactly what the landscape looked like, and they show it to us from the way that we see it as people. So these are the oblique views looking down on valleys, and so they're very powerful. They help us understand the way things were. They're limited in the sense that typically an historic photograph, which pushes our understanding of the landscape back in time earlier than we have other methods to do that, they're limited in that it gives us a single, sort of moment in time. So it's not that we can say, look at this old photograph and this is what you should restore to. This is your reference point. But they are really useful in being able to say, look at the changes in the landscape, look at the differences, and what can we learn from these historic images that helps inform what we can do in the future.
Is there something at the moment that I forgot to ask you that you would like to add?
Well, there's some of the work we're doing right now is extending our interest in restoration work to inquire about the emergence of ecological novelty along the eastern slopes of the Rockies. So several of the students and colleagues working with me right now are interested in what are novel elements in the landscape. So invasive species, significant human developments, shifting climate, all sorts of different drivers of change that are creating new kinds of ecological conditions. And we are trying to understand what, the extent to which that is the case, and then what implications that has for how we think about restoration and management in the future. So that's a big area of interest for me right now. I'm also interested in expanding the scope of the project. We have 120,000 historic high-resolution survey images. It's really it's an unprecedented collection. So I'm not going to be able to do all those images, or are my teams going to be able to do all those images? There's just too many. So how can we move that out to a wider public? And so we're working on ways of crowdsourcing image making right now, thinking about how we can get more people involved in the work that we do. So that's one of the exciting new areas.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Part of